So appreciate you. Woo! You may notice we have a new ASL here. This is Ellie Kennan, and she is a friend of our Becca's. And she's filling in, getting a feel for us. Welcome, Ellie. Okay, so it's weird when we're talking about you, isn't it? And you're signing that. I get that. Okay, so we're talking about magnificence. We had Frank earlier today, who was on the 8 a.m. service, talking about magnificence and honoring the power of it, the awe of it, and that we're often in that place of feeling like we're just starting on that spiritual journey again, right? Because it's never complete until when? Never, right? Yeah, as we're breathing, we are on that journey. We're breathing. All right, okay, just making sure we're on the same page there. For a moment, I was a little worried. I love this topic. It's a juicy topic, and it's juicy because, we've all played small for so long to fit into our families' and society's expectations of us. Right now is the time for us to really reevaluate those erroneous beliefs that we have and to step into alignment with our soul. There's something about fitting into our families, fitting into our communities, fitting into our lives that has required us to be less than magnificent. Less than magnificent. Our divinity knows that each time we play small, when we agree to certain things, when we agree to go along with someone else's erroneous ideas, our divinity knows. Each time that we decide to be inauthentic, to hold on to relationships and friendships, our divinity knows. And each time we settle for less, our divinity knows. But still, we hold on to the erroneous beliefs because of fear. Fear that we are not enough. Fear that there is not enough. Fear that we need to keep unhealthy people in our lives for us to feel somehow safe and a sense of belonging. Brené Brown, in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, talks about wholehearted living. And I want to get that quote up. There it is. Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. Worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, guess what? I'm enough. There's a concept, is it not? It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. You see, this shift in knowing is about changing our frequency from limited human awareness to the frequency of the divine. That's what we're talking about here. Our divinity knows that we are not measured by our completed tasks. Our divinity knows there is power in the acceptance that we are all things. All things. There is nothing in the universe that we are not. So we are afraid at times, and we're also brave. And we're vulnerable at times, and we're also lovable. Our divinity knows standing in our authenticity gives others permission to live their lives out loud and in power, simply by being authentic. So we often think that people who are courageous are never afraid. And that's a myth. I can testify to that. That's a myth. Courage is a call from our inner wisdom. And it says, look, I know you feel afraid. I know you feel vulnerable. I know there's uncertainty, but I have equipped you to step out in boldness. The easier path for us humans is, guess what? To go along with the crowd, to not make any of those waves, and not to stick our heads above that parapet. But you know what? The easier path, that's how we play small. The easier path is how we play small. So many of you have blessed me with kind words, saying that I have been brave and courageous in my leadership of this community, because you know what it takes. Because you know that it takes a lot to shift to the next iteration of consciousness. And I'm going to borrow my board president's mantra, Frank. He says this every time we meet. My God thinks very highly of me. And I concur. And what this means for me, and maybe for Frank as well, is that as God guides me, I'm often in discussion about, really, God, you really want to, you think this is necessary right now? Because I know it's going to rock the boat. It's going to create waves, and it's going to even take some people off. And as I do what is mine to do, encourage and empower, I can tell you that I have feelings of vulnerability and uncertainty. How could I not? I'm human too, right? But I do it anyway. But I do it anyway. But I do it anyway. And I'm clear that I am here not to play small. I am here to be magnificent. And I'm here to model that as best as I can for my own humanity and my own divinity. And that means sometimes it's breathtaking and sheer brilliance, and other times it does take my breath away, but not in that fabulous way. You get my drift. Did you know in the White Stone ceremony that I facilitated the beginning of January, my word was prophet. That's what came from me. And my first thought was, you have got to be kidding me. That was my first thought. And then my next thought was, I probably misheard, center, breathe, listen, heard nothing else. Heard nothing else. And I realized that I was disappointed and a little afraid. Disappointed and a little afraid. Because in my belief, things don't usually end well for prophets. You know, that's the history. Let's go there. So I had to sit with those feelings for several weeks until I could get past the fear. I had to do my own spiritual work. I had to look at my beliefs, say, is that really true? Is that what God has for me? And then I realized prophets have been necessary for every evolution of consciousness on this planet. Prophets are the bringers of the word. Prophets are filled with the Holy Spirit. And they are committed to supporting everyone to have a closer connection to God. That's their role. That's not shabby. Hard, yeah, but it's a gift from the universe if I choose to accept it. Right? We all have free will. So if I choose to accept it. So to step into our magnificence is to move gently towards what scares the bejesus out of us. To get that. We are here at Unity Church of the Hills because we believe in transformation, that we can become our highest self. And as I mentioned frequently in my talks, transformation means action, action, action. And there are lots of different ways that we can take actions, but the one that we don't normally think about is compassion. What if we start with compassion? Pema Chodron, in her book, The Places That Scare You, writes this: when we practice generating compassion, we can expect to experience the fear of our pain. Compassion practice is daring. It involves learning to relax and allow ourselves to move gently toward what scares us. This is a completely different way than we have been programmed in our culture. Completely different. Because normally, our programming sounds like, suck it up, buttercup. That's what it sounds like. Our human programming wants to deny the fear, the pain, and the vulnerability. Our programming tells us that anytime we feel those emotions, we got to go into protect and get ready to fight. That's what our programming says. And it's similar to Captain James T. Kirk of the USS Enterprise. I've got to do that. Pause. When, right, the Klingons are coming, and what does he shout? He shouts, engage shields, right? And fire those photon torpedoes. And in our humanity, do you know what that means? It means putting up those walls and barriers and blaming others. Did you hear that? Putting up the walls and barriers and blaming others. Compassion practice is really about being the frequency of love, forgiveness, and acceptance. It's not easy. I get that. But with all things, that compassion practice has to start with ourselves first. Compassionate people are compassionate with others. They are compassionate first with themselves. You see, once we're able to accept that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to feel pain, we're going to have some fear, simply because we're human. It's part of the human condition. And then through our ability of a shared connection, we get to then accept that in others, in their humanity. Brown defines the human connection as this: as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. Connection. How often do we miss the mark in our biological drive for human connection, thinking that it means that we have to accept being small? If I want to be in a relationship with someone, then I've got to be small. If I want to be in this love relationship, it means I've got to be less than. I don't want him to feel threatened. Oh, heaven forbid. Right? But it's in our wanting to feel safe, connected, and belonging that we accept being with others who blame us, who shame us, and see our magnificence as a personal threat to their well-being. And then we go into agreement with them. What? Yeah, that's the crazy part. We go into agreement with them, playing by their rules and their insecurities. But those types of relationships aren't connections for our highest good. And guess what? It's not a connection for their highest good either. Magnificence calls us to be the frequency of love and acceptance while having healthy boundaries. What? Healthy boundaries, my friend. So if you need me to be less than I am, that's not an expectation that I desire to fulfill for you. Right? And in magnificence, there is a willingness to not make the other person wrong because of their expectations. Magnificence says, well, if I engage in a dialogue with this person who has those expectations with me and affirm what my truth is, well, if they can't hear that, if they can't support that, then you know what? It's okay to bless and release. It's okay to bless and release. And as you continue to be in that desire to be magnificent, remain committed to being compassionate. We don't have to make them the enemy. We don't have to make them wrong. We can be compassionate for where they are and where we are. And then from this higher frequency of worthiness, guess what happens? You will find people who truly see you, hear you, and value you. And how will you know that these are those folks? Because they're excited about you. They want to lift you up. They want to cheer you on in your success and encourage you when you feel afraid. So I'm going to look at this from a different perspective. What do the sacred texts tell us about being in the process of becoming a full expression of the divine? Well, today we're going to look through the lens of Buddhism, and we're going to talk about the Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva is one who seeks awakening. It's an individual on the path to becoming the Buddha. Now, in some sects of Buddhism, there's a belief that the Bodhisattva is a person who has almost reached nirvana, but delays doing so out of compassion for other suffering beings. The Bodhisattva's path to enlightenment is about removing the cause of sorrow, which lies within the erroneous perceptions of the self. Now, from the book Buddha, the Gospel by Paul Carus, he describes the spiritual journey of the Buddha and refers to the Bodhisattva as the enlightened one on the path to becoming the Buddha. And here, the Bodhisattva is in deep meditation, and he realizes the following: destroy wrong perception, and there is an end of errors in individualized beings. Destroy misconception, and you do away with thirst. Destroy thirst, and you will be free of all morbid cleaving. Remove the cleaving, and you destroy the selfishness of selfhood. And then the author Paul Carus describes that when the Buddha reached enlightenment, he came to understand Dharma. And Dharma is truth. And this is what the Buddha said: there is a self and there is truth. Where self is, truth is not. Where truth is, self is not. Self is individual separateness and that egotism which begets envy and hatred. Truth is the correct comprehension of things. It is the permanent and everlasting, the real in all existence, the bliss of righteousness. The existence of self is an illusion. And here is no wrong in the world, no vice, no evil, except what flows from the assertion of self. The attainment of truth is possible only when self is recognized as an illusion. That's pretty powerful, my friends. It's talking about our small self, our ego, our personality, believes in separation. It believes that there are things against us, people against us. It believes that there is lack. And it really wants to satisfy our senses to the utmost ability that we have. But all of that is an illusion. Truth is of source. Therefore, truth is beyond this realm. Truth is love that is unending, and truth understands that it is all God. All is for us. So, I talked about all of this to say what? Here we are in our lives. Here we are in our lives. War is happening. People are being treated poorly around the country based on race, based on skin color, based on ethnicity, based on their religious beliefs. And for us to live our spiritual lives out loud, it requires us to understand that true magnificence is knowing that there is only oneness. there is only oneness. There is no separation from God or each other. Magnificence means knowing everyone deserves to live in peace and security and prosperity. Magnificence asks us to step up in power for those who are being treated less than. So when war is engulfing our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine, we are called to act. The Spirit won't stop speaking either until we act. This week I heard from 2 spirit circles. You know, the spirit circles are those intimate groups that are part of UCOH. And both of them were, we need to do something for our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. What can we do? We need to do more than prayer. And I hear them. And so the question then becomes, what steps in power will you take? What steps in power will we take? How will we end that erroneous programming, that erroneous belief that says, that's their problem, has nothing to do with me? It's all our problems, my loves. It's all our problems. And ours is to show up in our highest self. So whatever it is, whatever is yours to do, my question stands. How will you be magnificent? How will you be magnificent in your personal life? How will you be magnificent at work? How will you be magnificent in this spiritual community? That's what the call is. I'm hoping you'll answer it. Namaste.